Hello again from the Markets Decoded channel. So today I want to talk about earning interest on your crypto. Sounds great, right? Well, the typical YouTuber on the topic of earning interest will show you some crazy number that you can earn along with a bunch of slick company logos. Then they'll probably show you a flow diagram that lays out how easy it is to do this. Deposit your assets get lent out, and then you get interest returned to you. Makes it seem like it's really worth it and you'll make a lot of money because most people are too lazy to even do this, but it's not that hard. And at this point, the usual YouTuber will shill their affiliate links, get you signed up, and go laughing all the way to the bank. What your typical YouTuber won't tell you about, at least until they're forced to admit it, is how many of these lending platforms go bankrupt. All those logos I showed you before, they lost customer funds or froze out their customers and often declare bankruptcy, with the exception of BlockFi, which is still ongoing. They were all operating exchanges and lending platforms, but they went bust. The question is, why? Well, you have to ask yourself, where does the money for your yield come from? Yield involves risk, so higher yield equals higher risk. When a high yield savings account only gives you 3%, why are so many crypto yield products offering you more than double that just for parking your Bitcoin with them? Because they are higher risk. What form does this risk take for you as a lender? Essentially, borrowers might not pay you back the coins that you lent them, leading to bankruptcy and lost funds. Let's walk through how this actually works. So you lent your Bitcoin to a lending platform. They put it in their vault. Then a hedge fund or some borrower comes to that vault and says, hey, I know you have a lot of Bitcoin from all of your customers. I want to take out a loan from you and I'll pay X% for that loan. Well, it's in the lending platform's interest to lend out that Bitcoin. That's how they give you yield. So they lend out that Bitcoin, and in return, they keep a receipt for that one Bitcoin in their vault, and you have a claim on that receipt, essentially. When the hedge fund goes belly up, they don't have your Bitcoin anymore. They traded it away and lost it. Now they owe Bitcoin to that lending platform, which just has a receipt for Bitcoin. What are you left with? A claim on a receipt. There's no Bitcoin left. You're left holding the bag. So when you deposit some Bitcoin or crypto with a lending or savings account platform that offers you yield, that exchange or platform is giving those coins to someone else. However, they still tell you we have your Bitcoin whenever you want it. So there are two claims to one amount of coins. What this can cause is the infamous bank run. 1929 and many other financial crises were a great example of this. Depositors lose trust in the bank or the lending platform's solvency. They rush to the platform or the bank to withdraw their funds. But that bank already lent out all those funds, so they don't have enough on hand to give everyone their money back. And if the crisis is very bad, it causes bankruptcy, which is when the platform's liabilities, the money it owes to creditors and depositors, exceed the assets that it has. The moral of this story is that yield is risk. If a platform is offering you yield, they are lending out your Bitcoin and taking risks with it. If those risks go bad, you're often the one left empty-handed or waiting for years in a bankruptcy court to get just a small fraction of what you deposited. You have to ask yourself, where does the money for my yield come from? This is not a new phenomenon with crypto. It's as old as finance and banking itself. What about new things like decentralized finance? While decentralized finance provides more transparency into the workings of a lending protocol than a centralized lending platform, the fundamentals of finance still remain true. You have to take a step back and ask, where does the money for my yield come from? It's a simple but powerful question. So I encourage you to do your own research before using any DeFi yield product. Don't use it until you feel satisfied that you know where the money that's supplying your yield is coming from and that it's a sustainable source. From my understanding of DeFi, yield can come from one of a few sources. One is just lending out to other users of the DeFi protocol via collateralized loans, similar to a lending platform. Then there's incentivization for contributing liquidity to a decentralized exchange or other type of lending pool. This can offer high rates when the protocol is young and unproven, but your earnings are usually coming out in the form of the protocol's own token, and you're taking on the risk that that protocol doesn't take off. If you're first, maybe you make some money, but you need to be very active. This is not a savings account scenario. Another way that you could be making yield is through inflation of the token supply. So you and other holders of the token are essentially paying for your own yield through the debasement of the token. There's a different set of risks with DeFi. Some of those are similar to the risks of centralized lending platforms, while some are completely new. While the code is open source, which is honorable and better than centralized lending platforms, there is still the risk of hacks to the lending protocol or bugs that allow for an exploit or unintended behavior causing a loss of funds. This is new technology without much in the way of precedent to go off. In many of these lending protocols, you're lending stablecoins, so that's another risk. Those stablecoins have their own code, their own stabilizing mechanisms, or their own third parties that are providing backing, and any of those could also go wrong. You have inflation. Like I said earlier, inflation in the token can give you a yield, but then inflation can also water down what looks like a yield and mean you're actually losing value over time, even though the number on your screen is going up. And finally, sometimes these protocols are just convoluted Ponzi schemes, requiring new investors in order to keep functioning. I want to talk about the Ponzi-nomics for a second. So in a Ponzi scheme, the payout to existing investors requires new investors to come in and contribute fresh capital. This can go on until the supply of new investors and capital dries up, at which point the scheme usually completely unwinds. It often earns high yields for early adopters while stealing everything from those who join later. Axie Infinity is a blockchain game that requires you to buy or rent an NFT in order to play, but you could earn by playing this game. The game did really well during the last crypto bull market, but like a Ponzi scheme, it leaned on growth and constant inflation in its SLP token, as well as the in-game NFTs. When that growth fizzled, it largely imploded. This is not unlike a Ponzi scheme, where new buyers and investors bring new capital that's needed in increasing amounts in order to pay out existing buyers and investors. In this case, new players buying new NFTs and investing in the game's token, hoping for a moonshot, were needed to keep inflation and player payouts from debasing and destroying the value of the digital assets held by the existing users. Terra Luna is another spectacular example. It was an algorithmic stablecoin with a flawed design that suffered a sort of bank run and collapsed in value by 99.9% in just a few days, wiping out billions of dollars for investors. So you have to watch out for these Ponzi-nomic setups. It's time for the bad news. There is no such thing as free money. Money is a representation of energy, and people are not going to give you their energy unless you do some work or take on some risk for them. Those rules don't change, whether it's finance in the traditional world or the new world of decentralized finance. How can you protect against loss of funds from yield platforms and protocols? Instead of giving some company or protocol control of your coins so they can lend them out, secure them using an open source signing device, also known as a hardware wallet, which you own. While you won't earn a yield doing this, you will greatly reduce the chance that the mistakes of others affect your coins in any way. With great power, of course, comes great responsibility, so you'll want to learn how these wallets and signing devices work. If you take a look in the description below, I put a guide on hardware wallets that will get you started. It certainly isn't comprehensive, but it is a place to start. Thanks for listening, and keep your coins safe out there.